People may say the best things in life aren't free, but as somebody who was in Norman, Oklahoma this weekend, I can respectfully disagree. What up, beasts? Welcome to What Dudes Want to Hear. And let's go ahead and chat about week 2 of college football. So, last week, the big game was Michigan at Oklahoma, and Oklahoma came out victorious. And just from watching that game in person, John Mateer, man, that kid can ball. He looks like a potential Heisman candidate. He looks like he's ready to take that next step, and we'll be able to see if he takes that next step in SEC play, which is really awesome. This is a statement win for that Oklahoma program after a few tumultuous years. I mean, we're seeing Brent Venables coming off last year, a 6-7 year, the year before 2 years before that, a 6-7 year. He did have that 10-win year, but Brent Venables also hasn't won a bowl game since he's been in Norman. So this is a big boost for the Oklahoma fan base. Definitely something to be happy about going into this week. So also, I feel like this win really gives Venables some breathing room. I'm afraid that if Oklahoma had lost this game, a lot of people would have been calling for his seat just because at Oklahoma, you're expected to win, and he was finally able to get that statement win. Last year, a lot of people thought that in that Tennessee game at home, they've got their new quarterback, that, man, this could be the win that really cements his legacy in Oklahoma. But again, that didn't happen last year. But this year, it finally seems like we're starting to see a lot of that work payoff for the Sooners. So in this game, just from in-person observations, that Sooner defense looks strong. Man, they swarm the ball. They look like bees coming to like a snow cone and a trash can at a youth baseball game. They were swarming. So Kendall Daniels, I noticed him. He looked really good. He made some really big tackles. And then on the line, you got Jaden Jackson. They all look good. Sooner defense, they look pretty solid. Also, at the end of this game, the Sooners had an 8-minute drive to go ahead and finish off that game. So just for context, they're up. All they need to do is run out this clock. And with this drive, essentially, they told Michigan what they were going to do by continuing to run it, by continuing to do short passes. But whenever a team is telling another team, hey, this is what we're going to do, and that other good team can't stop what's happening, that is what championship contenders are made of. Am I calling Oklahoma a championship contender? Maybe. But there's a lot to be excited about if you're an Oklahoma fan. So yeah, definitely keep your eye on them. They play at Temple this week, but I feel good about the Sooners coming into the rest of the season. So as far as atmosphere, this atmosphere was electric. As somebody who's attended a couple of Oklahoma games over the past couple years, this was probably the most electric environment I've seen other than maybe the Tennessee game and the end of that Alabama game last year where the students stormed the field. Obviously, nobody stormed the field this year. It's a $500,000 fine if you do so. But there was field storming energy in the building. And as a fan, that's exactly what you want to see. And so also, just kind of looking at some of the stats, if you would have told me Oklahoma had more turnovers and penalties than Michigan going into this game, I would have thought, oh, Michigan probably wins this like 34-17. But that was not the case. Oklahoma did have 2 more turnovers and penalties, and Oklahoma really was not good on special teams. They had a missed field goal, they had a muffed punt, but they were still able to win by 10 points, which is really encouraging as somebody who is looking forward to Oklahoma hopefully succeeding. So while Michigan didn't have their greatest game, you got to remember that they are starting a true freshman quarterback. Is he one of the best quarterbacks that we've seen come out of recruiting recently? Yes. But with that, you have to acknowledge that Brent Venables' defense, that is a tough defense to go against. That was a tough defense for Jalen Milroe to go against. That's a tough defense for practices to go against. So you really got to realize that sometimes you can just put a kid in a blender, and that's what Brent Venables did, and he was slurping on him like a banana blueberry smoothie. While Michigan did lose the game, and you could see him fighting on the sidelines, I at least appreciate that they showed passion for where they were. Throughout the game, even whenever they were playing songs while Oklahoma was up, Michigan was jumping around. Michigan was jamming out the Seven Nation Army, which is a good sign whenever you can see a team go into another stadium and almost look at home there. And so while Michigan didn't light it up on the scoreboard, that 75-yard touchdown run to start off the third half, that was very encouraging. The ground game has this potential to explode, and Justice Haynes, man, he looks really good. He was finding the right gaps. He was staying behind his linemen. I think with this game, though, Oklahoma's defense is just too solid right now for that Michigan team to fully be able to rely on the run. To beat an Oklahoma team, you're going to have to be able to pass effectively and run effectively. And unfortunately for Michigan, they just weren't able to fully finish it out with Bryce Underwood spinning the pill. So overall, great game. I'd probably rate it about a 6 out of 10. It wasn't a shootout. It wasn't necessarily a rock fight, but overall it was an entertaining game. Even going into the second half, there were some momentum changes, so definitely not a bad game to watch at all. So up next, man, we got to talk about this Florida team. South Florida beat the Florida Gators in the swamp. And so last year, Billy Napier, the head coach of Florida, he was pretty much coaching for his life then. After losing to Miami early in the season, after just looking rough out of the gate, he was pretty much all but fired until he rattled off a couple of wins near the end of the season. But if we're looking at Florida's schedule, they have one of the toughest schedules in the nation. They play Georgia, they play Texas at home, they play LSU this weekend in Death Valley. So if I'm Florida, if I'm Billy Napier, I'm a little bit nervous about what I'm getting into with this upcoming weekend. But if we're looking back, whenever they got blown out by Miami last year, they were able to find a path. They were able to get on the straight and narrow. But can Billy Napier do it again? I mean, especially if a team doesn't look motivated, especially if they aren't paying attention to details. It's tough whenever you see a G5 team come into your home, a home that is known for being a really toxic environment, and still end up winning. So the Florida Gators, they are going to be high alert going into Baton Rouge this weekend. So definitely something to look out for in this LSU Florida Gators game. As far as Alabama goes, Alabama looks like it had a really solid rebound this week. So they looked like we should expect Alabama to look. Ty Simpson casually had a perfect game. And while it was against the University of Louisiana at Monroe, but Alabama really needed to win, especially after losing to Florida State. And while watching some Florida State film, while watching that absolute, I don't even know what you call that. That was like Darth Vader taking on the younglings in Revenge of the Sith. Man, that was a murder of East Texas A&M. So, yeah, both teams both look very solid is what I'm trying to get at. But also looking at Texas. Texas was another team that rebounded this week, but not quite in the way I was hoping to see Texas rebound, especially if they're wanting to compete for a national championship. So the long touchdown in the first quarter really jump-started Texas, but I need to see them kick it into gear. It just seems like they can't fully establish a direct rhythm. I don't know if that's an Arch Manning problem. I don't know if that's a Steve Sarkisian calling crazy plays problem, but Texas just doesn't look like the Texas we've come to expect, where they can really, dominate their opponent, even in the SEC. So with Texas, I'm interested to see how they play against UTEP this week. That should be a bit of a cupcake on their schedule, since UTEP is really not known for much else other than being in El Paso. So we'll see how the game goes this week, but I would expect Texas to clear them. I'm just not sure by how much yet. And if you can't fully clear San Jose State like you would want to, it makes me worry, not just about UTEP. I don't think they're going to lose or anything like that, but it makes me worried whenever you're getting into SEC play, and SEC play is no joke, which we'll get to later in the show. So yeah, Texas need to see a little bit more from them, but I am happy to see that they were able to rebound a little bit coming off of the loss at Ohio State. Man, we got to talk about Oregon. So with Oregon and Oklahoma State last week, there was a bit of an interesting clip that went around with Mike Gundy basically saying that Oregon had way more money than them, so Oregon was going to be able to outspend them. Let's roll the clip right now.
We spent around $7 million over the 3 years. I think Oregon spent close to 40 last year alone. Wow.
All right, so Mike Gundy, he's all upset, doesn't have the money, but let's see what Dan Lanning had to say in return to that.
We spend to win. Some people say to have an excuse for why they don't. We'll let it play out.
And Dan Lanning didn't just talk the talk. Boy, he walked the walk. So the final score of this game was 69-3. Oklahoma State was both outspent and outplayed this game. And at one point, their quarterback threw 2 pick sixes in a row. Oregon didn't even score in the fourth quarter. In the first, second, and third, they scored at least 21 points per quarter. So definitely a horrible look for Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State looks like a G5 team right now. And going into the Big 12, a very competitive Big 12, they need to get it in gear or Mike Gundy's days are numbered at Oklahoma State. So definitely watch out for that. Let's talk about Clemson. So going into the season, Clemson was my national championship pick. I felt really high on them. They've got Cade Klubnik. They've got over 80% returning production in 2025. But Clemson was down 16-3 at the half versus Troy. And so right now, Clemson is in a very precarious position. Troy really ran it down their throats in the first half, and just from watching that, it looks like Clemson is playing to the level of other teams, specifically in the first half against Troy and in the game against LSU. Going into both of those games, I believed Clemson could definitely get the win, but they seem to want to play at the same level of their opponents. And whenever you do that, generally, at least for Clemson, it seems like it's producing negative results because these teams are coming in thinking, oh man, big bad guy Clemson, we got to take him down. This is a team that has won multiple national championships, when in reality, Clemson kind of looks all bark, no bite right now. Granted, they did look a little bit like they had some fight in the second half of that game because once they got that ground game going, they looked really good. And with Clemson, I'd really like to see them get a statement win, but it's going to be difficult this week. They're playing at Georgia Tech, and with Clemson already having a loss, if they lose another game, they'll probably have to play and win the conference if they want to fighting chance of making the playoff. And with Florida State, with Miami, man, if Georgia Tech rattles off a win this week, that's a scary situation for Clemson. And not even to mention SMU. They came off a loss against Baylor, but nothing stopping them from running the table again. So the ACC is about as wide open as we've seen in a while over the past couple years. So definitely take note of Clemson and look at their score this week and say, was this a statement? Did they look lethargic out there? Just look for that whenever you're watching Clemson or looking at the score sheet after the game. So, like I was talking a bit about earlier with Texas, last year Texas came into the SEC and it looked like they were just able to smoke everybody. It looked like they were able to just run through the SEC, but I don't think that's going to be the case this year. And the reason I don't think that's going to be the case is because teams like Mississippi State, the team that was last place in the SEC last year, just beat the number 12 Arizona State at home. Jeff Lebby has his statement win at Mississippi State. And honestly, I didn't understand how this wasn't a bigger game. I think if you had a different name instead of Mississippi State with Arizona State coming to town, that could have been a very likely opportunity and location for College Game Day to be at. It just absolutely blew my mind that this game wasn't paid more attention to. And so with this win, it really shows that there aren't any cupcakes left in the SEC. Granted, Kentucky doesn't look great. Mississippi State, I don't think they're going to rattle off 8 or 9 wins or anything this season, but they're no slouch, as you can see from this win against Arizona State, a team that was in the playoff and was one down away from making the semis last year. So definitely keep your eye on Mississippi State, and the SEC is likely to be a bloodbath this year. It's kind of be hard to escape the SEC without 3 losses, 2 losses. I would be very surprised if a team escaped with even just 1 loss. So be really looking out for that. There's not a slouch in the SEC right now. So, also, finally, the last game I want to talk about, Baylor versus SMU, which was on the CW of all channels. Took me about 20 minutes to try and find that game, but Baylor did ultimately beat SMU in a thriller. At one point, SMU had a 98.9% chance to win this game with 6 minutes left in the fourth. And they were up by 2 touchdowns, but Baylor, down by these 2 touchdowns, Sawyer Robertson basically put the team on his back and put them into overtime. Robertson had 440 yards, 4 touchdowns, and it seems like after last week, kind of dismantling against Auburn, it looks like they're slowly putting the pieces back together. If you're a Baylor fan, this is exactly what you want to see. The team showed fight. The team showed grit. The team showed that, hey, even if we're down by 14 in the fourth quarter, we can still come back and make a win. We don't care about going to overtime. All we care about is getting a win. And if you're a fan of a team, that's all you want to see. You want to see teams step up whenever they're faced with that adversity, especially after coming off of a loss last week. So, huge win for Baylor. It's an unfortunate loss for SMU. I mean, really, if they're looking at making the playoff again, they're going to need to pretty much run the table in the ACC. I don't think we're going to be able to see another SMU getting in with that 10th seed over a 3-loss SEC team this year, especially after this loss against Baylor. So definitely rough outing for SMU, especially if they're hoping for the playoffs again. But my ugly duckling of this last week, man, folks in Stillwater aren't going to like this one. Whenever you lose 69-3 and whenever you throw 2 pick sixes back to back, that causes for being the ugliest duckling of the week. So Oklahoma State Cowboys, sorry, but that's just what happens. And Oklahoma State, you're really not even going to like this either. My Johnny Cash pick of the week is going to be Oklahoma. Oklahoma bettors made money. Oklahoma fans made money. The Oklahoma head coach made money in the fact that this was a huge recruiting weekend for them. So Oklahoma, you looked great. Y'all should feel good about yourselves going into Temple. But Temple's also no slouch, so definitely be aware of that as well. But going into this week, I'm going to call this new segment on the show, this is going to be called the Dual TV Setup. Mr. Jones, what is the dual TV setup? Well, that's a great question. The dual TV setup is if you are watching 2 TVs on game day, here is what games you should be watching simultaneously. So, in the 11 a.m. slot, on your big TV, you should be watching Clemson at Georgia Tech. This is a big quarterback matchup. Cade Klubnik versus Haynes King. Both of these guys are experienced. Both of these guys are multiple-year starters. This is going to be a good game from the quarterback perspective, and both of these quarterbacks have experience pretty much willing their team to win. I think Georgia Tech has a great home advantage, and honestly, I think this is a trap game for Clemson. If Clemson doesn't take this absolutely 100% seriously, I'm chalking this up as a Georgia Tech win, and I'm also going to take Georgia Tech to win anyways. So give me Georgia Tech against Clemson. On your smaller TV, at the 11 a.m. slot, you should be watching Wisconsin at Alabama. If you watched and remember last year, Alabama absolutely smoked Wisconsin up in whatever town they're from. You know it, it's just not on the top of my head right now. And right now, this is Bama's time to prove it. They went up against the Cupcake last week, but after the Florida State loss, Bama needs to prove that, hey, we are serious contenders. We have a good quarterback. We have a good receiver room. We have a good O-line. We have a solid defense. They want to prove that. This is the time to prove it before SEC comes in. You don't want to look like a chump going into SEC play for the year. So, but in that game, I don't think Alabama will look like chumps. Give me Alabama at home. In the afternoon slot on your big TV, you need to be having Georgia at Tennessee on that big TV. This is where College Game Day is going to be. It's the talk of the town this week. And Tennessee really has been slept on, but don't sleep on them. Georgia didn't look amazing against Austin Peay, but knowing Kirby, I bet he fixed it. And this is an interesting quarterback matchup as well as Joey Aguilar. A lot of people were concerned about the turnovers for him going into the season, but he really hasn't turned the ball over much, and the run game has looked good. So this is going to be interesting. If this game's a rock fight, I think Georgia's probably going to win it, just knowing kind of that championship pedigree that they have down there. But I think Tennessee could survive a shootout if they need to. If this is a pinball game where you look up and the score's all of a sudden 38-42. I think Tennessee has a really good chance in a game like that, but I don't think it's going to be a game like that. I think Georgia's really going to lock in on defense this week, so give me the Georgia Bulldogs. On your smaller TV, you should have South Florida at Miami. So this is a big pressure spot for both teams. For a Miami team, this is a team that really wants to make the playoffs this year. They were pretty much one win away from making it last year until they lost in the last game of the season. So also for South Florida, man, this is about as big of a prove-it game as you can get. So they just beat Florida on the road. They beat Boise State at home. If they can beat a very highly ranked Miami with a very solid quarterback option in Carson Beck, this would be an absolutely monumentous win for South Florida's program. I think this is going to be a pretty hostile environment, even if it is an NFL stadium, not even close to campus at all. That stadium was rocking against Notre Dame, and with that win against Florida, South Florida's win against Florida last week, I think the Miami fans are going to be out in droves this week. So South Florida, if they want to win this game, they're going to need to strike early and strike often. Miami's going to be on alert. They know that this South Florida team can beat you if you're looking in between your legs the whole game. So with that being said, I am going to take Miami in this game just because USF has already pulled off one of those big upsets this week. I think with Miami being able to see that, oh, Florida just lost, and additionally, it's an in-state team. So there's an element of pride there as well where they're not going to want to lose. And so I'm going to take Miami here. Also, I think this is, if Carson Beck is going to have a Heisman campaign this year, I think it starts this week. So if Carson Beck has a good game, look for him high atop those Heisman odds. In prime time, on your big game, you're going to want Florida at LSU. This is a must-win spot for both teams, in my opinion. For Brian Kelly and the Tigers, this is a chance to prove it. This is a chance to keep that forward momentum going. They have struggled starting off the season poorly in the past, and they've done really well through the mid part of the season. If LSU, which LSU's goal every year is to win a national championship. If LSU wants to do that this year, this is a must-win for them. This will keep Brian Kelly off the talk, off the hot seat conversation, which he really shouldn't be on anyway in the first place. But it's just an extra security blanket, something you don't have to worry about. Whichever team loses, their fan base will be loud. And this is the first big night game with Death Valley this year. So give me LSU. I just think LSU is too good for Florida to come in and be able to do anything against them. I think, don't get me wrong, I think Florida will play well, but I really trust LSU to find a groove, especially after only putting up 23 against Louisiana Tech. So give me LSU in that game. And then last but not least, on that smaller TV, I would put on Texas A&M at Notre Dame. So the Notre Dame QB looks pretty good. And also, from the Texas A&M perspective, this could be a program-defining win for Mike Elko. A&M could be on every playoff prediction in the country with a win. Granted, I think this is just going to be business as usual for Notre Dame, but also don't forget about them playing at Arkansas and USC at home. So if Notre Dame was to lose a game like this, that's 2 losses. And is the committee really going to be all that nice to a 2-loss Notre Dame whenever they're not scheduling per se the most difficult conference schedule? Granted, you may be thinking, Ethan, they don't have a conference schedule. They're not in a conference. That's a good point. And also, Notre Dame not being in a conference, they don't have a chance to win a conference championship. So if they're just not ranked high enough, they're not going to make it in the playoff, point blank, period. But with that being said, I think Notre Dame is going to win this game. I think it's going to be close, though. I think A&M's probably going to look pretty good. I think A&M's going to come out of guns blazing. But I think with Notre Dame's pride, I think with their ability to play at home in literally the cathedral of college football, I just think Notre Dame gets it done here and sends A&M back to College Station, hoping to start off well at SEC play. But that's all my takes for this week. I appreciate y'all listening in. I appreciate y'all tapping in. If you're not, go ahead and start following on the socials. We're on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Spotify. So definitely throw a follow over there. I appreciate y'all listening. And guys, let's have a great weekend. We'll see you next week. And we'll see you Saturday. Bye, guys.